Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Art in the Wild. This is another intro that was recorded after the actual episode was recorded itself. I just wanted to use this to talk a little bit about what I've been doing. Life has been super busy recently. I know I mentioned that in a story I just posted a little bit earlier on the Instagram account, but basically I work full time, and then I just went on 2 trips, which is actually what this episode is about. But yeah, I just went on 2 road trips for photography and trying to keep up with photography and then editing all those images and stuff. It's just been like a bunch of stuff. So being able to actually schedule an episode and then record it and then produce it has not been something I've been able to do for a couple weeks, but I just wanted to update you guys just to let you know that I'm not dead or I didn't give up. I'm still doing it. But yeah, so this episode was just going over stories from the last 2 trips I went on with 2 other photographers that were on those trips. It was a blast. It was a way more casual episode. It was less, how do I say this? It was less topic focused and more just kind of like unhinged ramblings from from the trip and just stories. But we did, talk about some of the strategies we use when we were on locations, and the second half is more photography related. The first half is just kind of talking about silly stuff that happened on the trip. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed. This is another kind of episode style that I'm going to want to pursue more in the future, probably usually with just myself telling stories of images that I got if I think it's a good enough story. But yeah, I hope you guys all enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Now, today on my Instagram, I posted a story, like a poll, and not on my actual Instagram, but like on the Instagram for the podcast itself. And I was like, hey, would you guys be interested in a storytelling episode? And the response was overwhelmingly positive. I think I got like 20 responses, and they all said yes. I was surprised. I was worried I was going to get on there. It's going to be like 70% just like no, like people were just like absolutely not. But yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing today. It's a storytelling episode. I did talk about this in the intro a little earlier, but recently I've been on 2 road trips, and I'm going to be talking about the most successful one photographically today with the 2 other people that are also on this call. And I went on both trips with them, but I will let them introduce themselves. So Soren, if you want to go first.
Hey guys, what's up? My name is Soren Goldsmith, and I'm a wildlife photographer from the Massachusetts area. And I went on 2 awesome road trips with Martin Culpepper.
Sweet. Awesome. And you forgot you were the winner of the Slingshot Challenge
That's true.
International.
I'm the winner of the National Geographic Slingshot Challenge for my work using camera traps to document wildlife in forest that was going to be cut down. And so I've done grant work with Mass Audubon and a lot of stuff with camera trapping and focusing specifically on urban mammals. Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. And then Maceo, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Hey guys, my name's Maceo Susi. I also went on these trips with Soren Goldsmith and Martin Culpepper, and I had a really great time.
Awesome. I don't know why I was like, Macy, do you want to go next? But there's literally nobody else on the call, so that didn't make a whole lot of sense. But yeah, so do you guys want to cover the trip? Because what we're going to be talking about is a trip where we went to southern New York to photograph shorebirds. And it kind of started when Soren reached out to me about confirming the trip that we just went on to Maine, because he's like, hey, are you going to go on this trip or not? I was like, well, I kind of want to save up some time because I've got some stuff going on in August, but also I may want to take some time off to go to this place in New York to photograph shorebirds. And Soren's like, well, me and Macy are going to go in like 2 weeks. So if you want to go with us, you can. And so that was like 5 weeks ago or something like that. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, I can make it. But do you guys want to talk about the trip that we just went on first or no?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, it wasn't okay.
Oh
It
yeah.
wasn't this one wasn't really that photographically successful. So it's gonna be. I wish we could get the other person that was on the main trip was Hiroki. But I'm not gonna make a whole podcast episode for this one, and we didn't get him on this one because he wasn't on the New York trip. But it wasn't. I mean, it was technically successful. Our goal was to go up and see a bear, which
We
happened.
did. It
We
was successful in that regard.
it may have ran across the road in front of us for like 2 seconds, but aside from that, it worked. Um, what did we get? I mean, we got snowshoe hares, right?
We got
Yo,
snowshoe hares, some good solid shots.
Which was cool. It was crazy because we pulled up to the campsite. What we were doing is we were going from campsite to ask the rangers and be like, "Hey, have you seen anything?" We're all in the car, and I look out the window and I see this rabbit, and it looks like a cottontail, but then it lifted up its head, and it was like twice as big, and its face was all like not messed up, but just completely different looking. And I just scream in the car, I'm like, "Oh my god, that's a hare!" Right? So we all get out and we kind of gather around, and it was super chill. It was like really habituated. We all gather around in front of it, being all quiet because we thought it was the only one that like existed, because they're super like hard to photograph, at least from what I've been told. And then it turned out later there was just like 20 of them at every campsite, which was neat. I actually got some ones that were somewhat decent. We saw a bear. It was on our last morning there. We were driving down the dirt roads looking for bears, and then it just sprints out in front of us really fast, and we all got out of the car trying to find it again, but we couldn't. And then also prior to that, Soren was adamant that he could beat a bear if he had a knife in a fight. And then after seeing that, he was not so adamant because he thought they were
Don't
like
make
this.
me look bad on your podcast, Mark.
I'm not
I would
going
like
to.
it to be publicly known that I do not believe I could beat a black bear with a pocket knife.
After
right,
seeing
right.
one. And then Maceo, didn't you say they were smaller than you thought they were gonna be?
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I don't really know what size I expected most bears to be, but I expected them all to be like a slight
Huge.
bit larger.
Yeah.
No, I didn't think black bears were that huge. I don't know. I mean, I guess that wasn't the largest size they could get,
Mhm.
and it was actually kind of cool that they were smaller than I expected. Yeah.
Yeah. It was cool. I mean, that was my first. I've seen a lot of black bears out west, specifically in like the greater Yellowstone ecosystem area. And this was my first time ever seeing one in the Northeast. Also, Maceo, the fact that this was like you saw a black bear before a moose in the Northeast is like a pretty great achievement, because most people, moose are significantly easier to find out here. So yeah, that was we didn't. It was weird because we didn't see a moose on this trip, and this area that we went to is really good for moose. So but at least we got to see the bear, even though we didn't get any photographs of it at all. But
Yeah, it was a really cool moment.
Tried to go fishing. It was a good attempt.
Try to what?
Really, overall, we had plans for a fish dinner, but
Oh yeah,
our friend Martin here,
dude, I caught
did not demonstrate himself as a strong fisherman. And
two
unfortunately,
wild
we were
trout.
unable to, and by we, I mean Martin. Martin was unable to secure a fish.
So I caught two wild trout on a fly rod, which I was pretty proud of. It's not my fault.
How big were those fish, Martin?
It's not my fault that they were below the legal limit for keeping size. Yeah. Yeah. The plan was to catch fish, but I guess I was just too good, and none of them wanted to.
Without pointing fingers, it was Martin's fault.
Yeah, possibly. Should we
I
talk
concur.
should we talk about the flushing of the hairs, or?
Yeah, I think we should.
I don't
I
think
think that's a very good point.
Personally, I don't think this is very relevant to Martin's podcast.
Wait. I think it is. It's photography related. So
I don't really think it's particularly.
I think it's more relevant.
I don't think it's
So-
really relevant to this
so I think
podcast.
we photographed 5 hairs, right? Soren's just putting his face in his hands. We photographed like 5 hairs, I think, and one person ended up standing up at the wrong time or moving at the wrong time or too fast, and one person caused all of those hairs to vacate the area at different points and without pointing any fingers. uh, Without pointing any fingers, it was Soren's fault. But there was this one where we were photographing it. Actually, I got some decent images of it. It was like in the fog and stuff. But then, Soren, did your legs get like tired and you decided to stretch? Like you just tried to stretch your legs, I think it was. And like,
Yes, I was trying to stretch my legs.
yeah. So you ended up striking this like weird yoga pose or something when we were all trying to slow approach this hair, and then it just ran away.
That's great. I'm really glad that we got to talk about this.
It was impressive, honestly.
Well, technically the bear was running from the car which you were driving. So also technically speaking,
This is insane. I'm scapegoated on the Martin Culpepper podcast.
no, but it was, yeah, to be fair, I did completely miss on catching a fish. I was so confident on the way up because I do consider myself to be a rather good fisherman, which I did not demonstrate that well on this.
No, you did not.
I'm still happy that I caught those 2 trout. It was sad though, because we're basically where we were, one of the campsites we were on, there was like apparently lynx that were going through the campsite every day. One of the rangers told us. And when we went to that bridge that the lynx were crossing over, I saw all these trout just like hitting top of the water. So I was like, I'm gonna bring my fly rod here. And trout are really finicky, so I wasn't really expecting to catch any, but I kept getting hit after hit on this little grasshopper pattern I got it. So it's just flexing his slingshot water bottle on the video call. Too bad they're not going to post the video for this one. Maybe I should just include the video. No, but trout are pretty finicky, but I was able to catch 2 of them. I hooked another one. It got off right before I got there, but yeah, I'm still happy I was able to catch the 2 of them, even though I wasn't able to. The legal limit size in Maine for brook trout is like 6 inches, and both the ones I caught were like 3.5 to 4 inches, so it didn't work out. But anyways, that was a fun trip. I wish there was more to say about it, but it was a lot of fun. Ultimately, though, the photographs didn't, except for the hares. We did get the hares, no bear shots. But yeah, so that was the main trip. But while Soren was reaching out to me to see if I wanted to go on that, is when we kind of set up this New York trip. So getting on to the New York trip. Now, something important to mention before we get on to the actual travel itself is that prior to the trip, I was in charge of getting the hotel and all that stuff, right? So I was looking for hotels, and I was, on Google Maps on the location thing where you type in hotel and it gives you all the ones in the area. I was clicking through all of them, and there was like a Marriott's Inn, and I clicked on it. It wasn't too expensive, but then I looked and it was like an hour away from where we were trying to photograph. And the thing was, we were only there for a weekend. So we headed down on Friday night. We had a Saturday morning, a Saturday afternoon, and then a Sunday morning. And that was all we had, because it wasn't going to be really cloudy or anything for, for any extended period of time. So the light would have been horrific. So basically we had 3 sessions, and we were not going to risk having to wake up and drive an hour to get there through New York City. So that left us with this one hotel near the location. It was like an 8-minute drive. And I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the reviews, and it said like, it was like a 2-star hotel, I think it was. Maceo, you remember, what was that one review that was particularly scathing underneath the when you looked on like TripAdvisor for the location?
Was it like the one with like that I've been to like countries
yeah,
all
that
around
one.
the world?
Yeah,
Yeah, you could do it.
Okay, this person, so I'm looking through them. I'm looking through the reviews, and one of them is like, literally, it's like a book, right? It's like the Bible, half the Bible, maybe the New Testament. And it's all just bashing this place. And in one section of it, in all caps, it says, I have been vaguely, something similar to this. I have been all around the world, and this is the worst hotel experience I've ever had. One of the other ones talked about how they almost got scammed out of like $2,000 or something like that at this place. So I look at this, and I'm like, okay, we're not going there. So I look at other places around. I can't find any hotels. So I look at Airbnbs, and there's an Airbnb an 8-minute walk from the place, right? So I'm like, it's a little more expensive, but I'm like, okay, we'll go with that, because why not? So I send that in the group chat with the 3 of us. I'm like, we should go here. And then Soren, did you say that you won't fit in that house? Was that what you said?
Yes.
What does that mean?
I'm 6'3", and I need personal space and a tiny house. You conveniently left out that this Airbnb was not a normal Airbnb. It was listed as a tiny house.
Keep in mind, the hotel room we stayed in was 1 room, right?
Yeah, what?
Square footage was greater than this Airbnb would have been.
So anyways, he's like, oh, I won't fit in that or whatever. And it did look pretty small, I will admit that. And I'm like, yeah, but he's like, and then he sends in the group chat, it's like, what about this place? So I click on it, and it's the same 1-star, 2-star hotel that was, in quotes, the worst hotel experience ever. So I'm like, hey, man, have you looked at the reviews? He's like, yeah, but it's cheaper. And I'm like, you know what? Okay, we'll just take it. And keep this part in mind for later, because this one decision led to a complete chain of events that makes this whole story somewhat entertaining, but also terrible for us in the moment. But basically, that was all the beginning stuff. So we started driving down to New York, 4.5 hour drive. We got hit with a terrible rainstorm. Soren was the driver. Shout out to Soren. He handled New York pretty well. So
Thank you very much.
you're very welcome. It was a 4.5 hour drive. We got caught in a horrific rainstorm, like really bad. Like everyone on the highway slowed down like 20 miles an hour. And then like lightning struck directly on the other side of the highway, like really loud. And then we were driving like 2 hours, and we went to just pull into a gas station. And then Soren pulled into the wrong spot. And we're driving. And Soren, do you want to just tell them about our experience that we had in this wonderful little pocket of reality?
I'd love to, Martin. Yeah, no, I mean, a pocket of reality is putting it lightly. I would say a liminal space of trucks where everywhere you look is more trucks. And so we're driving down, and we think this is just a standard, gas station. Keep going, left, right, just walls of trucks in a maze. Take a left, more trucks. I did not know there were this many trucks
in the world.
Right? And here we are driving. I mean, I probably put on 2 miles on the car, just driving throughout this maze of trucks. And there's like occasionally you'd see like a truck driver look at us like, what are these dumbasses doing here? Like, but yeah, I'm navigating my way out of this odd, honestly, horror movie set of trucks. Fun times.
It was, dude, it was so bad because it was like literally you go in there and it was, I mean, would you say 600 trucks maybe in this place? More.
That sounds about right.
And it was funny because all the truck drivers would watch you. Like, I don't know if you were looking at this when you were driving, but when we drove by a truck, like all the trucks, you just see all the truck drivers' heads just follow you. And it was so creepy and weird. And you turn a left and there would just be trucks. You take a right and there would just be more and more trucks. And we eventually got out of there. And then we went into the rest stop. But that was kind of the first debacle that we had. And then I don't think we had any crazy stuff happen until we got down to New York, right?
Well, we couldn't get on the highway.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we went to Shake Shack, was it? And then we went to get off on the exit to get on the on-ramp to get on the highway, and there was just a cop just standing in the road with his car like parked. So we go to leave and we start driving around, and then Soren's like, okay, well, Siri redirected us, or Google Maps or whatever. And I'm looking at the map. I'm like, dude, that's going to take us back to the same spot. And they're like, no. So we drive another 5 minutes around, get back, and it's the same spot with the same cop just standing there. And how long did it take us to get back on the highway?
Probably like 30 minutes.
It was disastrous. I remember we were supposed to be there like 2 hours or 3 hours before. I think it ended up being like a 6-hour trip or something like that, because we stopped and then we got stuck in truck world and then had to spend 30 minutes trying to fucking get onto the highway. But aside from that, and we got into New York, and I remember one of the things that was weird is there was still a ton of traffic at like 12 in the morning. We ended up getting down there at 12 or so, and we get to our hotel and on Long Island. I'm like really shortening that time span. It was like hours in the car, but we get down there and we had this like plan because we got a 2-person room, because there was like not a lot of rooms available. So we got a 2-person room, but there's 3 of us. So 2 of us were going to go into the lobby and talk to the people, while the other one was going to walk upstairs and pretend he was already a guest there or something. We had this whole elaborate scheme. And then me and Maceo get out of the car. Soren goes to go park, and we walk into this hotel lobby, and it's 12:20 or 12:30 in the morning, right? On a Friday, a random Friday, not on a holiday weekend or anything. So we're expecting like an empty hotel lobby, right? We walk in there, and I kid you not, there was like 45 people all over the place in this tiny lobby. There was like kids falling asleep on couches and chasing each other around the room. So I look at Maceo and I'm like, what is going on, right? So we get in line, and then the dude at the counter is like arguing with these other dudes. Macy, I think you remember the argument that was going on better than I do. I don't remember that well.
Yeah, it was really funny. So there was this woman, and she like opened her room with the key to get in, and there was just like a guy in there, and they were both adamant that it was their room, and they were just like fighting each other, but more so trying to like come to an agreement with him, the guy at the front desk, that like their room was wrong, or like that they both got the same room. And the guy at the front desk was just like insistently like, you're wrong, like you're just incorrect. And they like battled it out for like 15
Like
minutes or
20.
so.
It was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
it was a
So
crazy amount of time.
stupid, because they weren't even when we got in there, they weren't even at the desk yet. So we were there for like 30 minutes. I remember Soren texts us in the group chat. He's like, hey guys, I can't really find any places to park. It's probably going to take a bit. I'm like, dude, you can take 5 hours. It's going to take us 3 business days to get through this line. And this is like almost 1 a.m. Wait, Soren, what happened when you were trying to park? Because I don't really remember if anything. I don't remember hearing you.
Parking was insane. I mean, that shit was insane. I'm sorry for swearing.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
So I mean, talk about liminal spaces. The way that they organized the roads was the most idiotic way I've ever seen parking done in my life. The roads in this town were ridiculous. Basically, in the center alley of every road, where there would normally be yellow lines, there were just parking spots. So like basically the it was like a boulevard, I guess, with parking in the middle of it. Instead of parking being on like the left and right side of the roads, it was in the middle of the road. And I figured, oh, well, with all this parking on every single street, of course I'll be able to get a parking spot somewhere.
You thought incorrect.
No, there was no parking anywhere. I mean, I drove in all directions, like 4 blocks, nothing, literally nothing. And I saw thousands of parking spots. And eventually I landed the most insane parallel parking of my entire life. I'm very proud of this parallel parking, and I got in at like a 1 foot margin, and I am blessed to this day.
Yeah, Soren's our awesome driver out of the group. He drove to Maine as well. Yeah, but while Soren's doing that, he's gone for like 40 minutes. So we're in this lobby. Me and Maceo were in this lobby for forever. And I remember I was like leaning, they had this like pole, like post, not a post, column in the middle of the room, and it had like a bunch of pebbles. It was like plaster with pebbles, and then there was just random pebbles missing out of it. Like someone just grabbed it and ran away. And we were using it to like lean against and rest. And then I was like, Mason, do you just want to stay here and wait? Because I'm going to just go up to the counter. You can just stay here with all our gear. And Macy was like, yeah. So I'm walking up. And as Macy said, these two, like the 2 people are arguing with the guy at the counter. And it just turns into like this childish arguing. And they're like, dude, you booked us in the wrong room. And the guy's just like, nuh-uh. He's just like, no. And it just was that back and forth, and then eventually they got it sorted out. I don't know how they did it, but when the guy was like, "No, you're wrong," I just turn around and look at Maceo, and I'm like, "Dude, this is gonna be a long night." I didn't say anything, but I just like mentally communicated that to him with my eyes, because I'm like, "This is gonna be bad." So I get up to the counter, and the guy is like, "Oh, hey man, how's it going?" I'm like, "Doing good. How are you?" He's like, "Yeah, it's going." I'm like, "Yeah, I feel that." Trying to be nice to him because it looks like he's having a really bad night. They had just had a power outage before. Like we were driving through the town and everything went dark. All the streetlights and everything went dark. So they said that messed up their system. But judging by how many people were in there, I'm willing to bet the line was already formed before the power outage. But regardless, we get up to the counter. I'm like, "Hey man, I'm here. I have a twin room reserved." He's like, "Oh, well, we don't have a twin, but would a queen work?" And I'm like, whatever at this point. It's like 12:30, 12:40 at this point. I'm like, I just want to go to bed. I'm like, yeah, sure. Whatever. He's like, okay. And he's like, "Oh, are you guys coming through the airport or whatever?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I booked last night through Expedia." And he looks at me with the face just like plastering just horror. And he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. We don't have any more rooms." And I'm too tired to be worried. I'm just looking, I'm like, I booked last night. or 2 nights ago, and I paid for it. So yeah. And he looks at his colleague, he's all worried. And then he goes to this huge stack of like photocopied papers, and they look like from like a science test in like 7th grade. You know how the ink is all black and like really contrasty and stuff. He's flipping through them, and he goes, "Oh, I found it here." And I'm like, okay, so that was, I thought we were gonna get kicked out and would have to sleep like in our car in Long Island. So I was really worried. So he gives us our room keys. We walk up the stairs, and we get to the stairs, like really steep and like narrow. We get up to the top to our floor, and this place is literally like the back rooms. Like it's super dense, compact hallways with all of these sharp turns. It feels like if you were in like a horror movie, if you walked up to the top, turned around to look down the stairwell, and the stairwell just disappeared and it wasn't there anymore, and you were just trapped in this endless hallway full of just doors. And we go through, it's like a maze. There's just random dead ends. One of the dead ends had this 3-foot tall door that had like paint peeling off of it, and it didn't go anywhere. It just led to the outside, and it just was there. So we get to our door, and we're tired, right? We're exhausted. It's almost 1 a.m. at this point. It might have been 1. I try to use my room key to scan in. Doesn't do anything. I try the other side, doesn't work. I try to scan it. Maybe there's a swipe placed at the top. Nope, nothing. Try the other one, scan it, doesn't work. Try the other side, try to swipe it at the bottom, at the top, nothing. I try like a credit card to plug it into the top, zilch, nothing, absolutely nothing. So I go to Maceo and Soren. What?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, and then you pass it over to me.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Martin, he's not very good at this type of thing. I'm gonna fix this. And nope, nothing.
Nope. Yeah. Soren was like, maybe he was putting it against the lock wrong. So he grabbed it and he tried. So we're all just laughing our asses off because this whole thing is so preposterous. We're sitting there in the hallway with all of our gear. And I'm like, well, I'm going to have to go back down because our keys aren't working. So I get up, I walk down the hallway. I've still got like tears coming out of my eyes because I was laughing so much. I get down to the lobby. The guy who was just there had left. It was a new guy now at this point. And I'm like, hey, man, we just checked in, but our room keys aren't working. And he's like, okay, well, let me get these for you. And he's reprogramming them for 10 minutes. And I'm just like standing there. And then he's like, okay, here you go. And right before I grab them out of his hand, he goes, oh, this is the one that needs a hard key. And he goes to a drawer in his desk, starts digging around and pulls out this actual physical key. He's like, here you go. I go up, I put it in the door, I go to spin it, and it doesn't work. It just spins in a circle. So I try again. It's not working, and we're just over it at this point. I give it to Soren, and then Soren puts it in. Soren, how did you manage to get it open?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, like this was ridiculous. This key. So we're like finally there. We put the key in the door, and we in like it's like it's a normal key lock, but instead of opening like it's supposed to, it just keeps on spinning. It's completely dislodged. It's completely broken. And I'm like, so Martin couldn't do it, and I gave it a go, and I started twisting the key and then like cranking the doorknob at the same time. And I don't know what happened, but eventually it opened the door. And I thought it was a miracle. I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to replicate it again. But you know what? We got in, and that's what mattered.
Yeah, he turns around, he looks at me, and Macy goes, like, after the door opens and just swings open, he just turns around, looks at us, goes, I don't think I can replicate that. So we go into our room, and it's like super sketchy. And there's like the 2 beds, and the beds, like, I think calling it a mattress would be generous. They're like really stiff, like plywood almost. And Maceo starts reading the reviews for this place because he didn't know we were staying at the 2-star shitty hotel. So he starts reading the reviews. He's like, dude, this person almost got scammed like out of $2,000. So Maceo starts freaking out, thinking we're going to get human trafficked or something. And then my plan, my card was full. I was going to download my shots onto my computer or a hard drive when I got down there and then format the card. But my computer didn't have any space, and I left my hard drive at home. So Soren came in clutch, and he gave me an extra card that he had that I was able to use, which saved me for the next morning. And then when we were all trying to sleep, this is kind of the last actually amusing thing that happened, and then everything kind of went smooth from here. But we were all trying to sleep, and then Soren, I don't know what you grabbed and threw, but you threw something in the pitch black when we were all trying to sleep. So it sounded like something like the lock fell off the door or something like that, and it freaked us all out.
I have a different recollection of this event.
You have a different.
No,
Okay, let's hear
what?
it. Maybe it's just like no.
I was trying to go to sleep, and all of a sudden I heard a bang in the corner of the room. And I don't know what it was, but
It was a
that house
ghost.
was falling apart. It
It
was
was
a ghost.
haunted. Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the place was haunted. I mean, it was like, yeah. Also, when we got in there, our door had like gaps on the bottom and the top too. Like you could just see the hallway light leaking into our room, and the whole thing was, it was interesting. So moral of the story is, unless you want a really fun story, don't stay at 2-star hotels that where people talk about getting scammed out of $2,000 and stuff. That was something that Maceo was really stressed about specifically because he's like, "This, we're gonna get kidnapped or something."
No, they did lose $1,000 though. Like,
Yeah.
like they lost.
I don't blame you. It was really sketchy. But yeah, so that was the eventful stuff. After that, we woke up and we went down to also something we didn't know if this place was going to be open for sunrise, which was a huge part. I remember in the beginning, Soren put out, because we wanted to figure out how to make this photography oriented, and Soren put out the idea of like, oh, we can talk about, how as a wildlife photographer you can plan your trips, and then me and Maceo pointed out the pretty evident fact that this was not a well-planned trip at all. We woke up at sunrise at 5 a.m. after dropping all the money on the hotel and driving 5.5 hours, and we didn't even know if the place opened for sunrise so we could shoot in good light. We had no clue. We were going in completely blind. We had no idea what was going on. Thankfully, we pull up to the place, the gates open. We just go in, we park, and it was insane. Like we walked out on the beach and it was just like 1,000+ common terns, hundreds of black skimmers. What'd you guys say, like 50 oyster catchers or something like that?
It was an absurdly high number.
It
Yeah.
was an absurdly high number of everything. It was ridiculous. There was just birds everywhere. And yeah, it was the sunrise of Saturday, the sunset of Saturday, and then the sunrise of Sunday. And that's kind of what we spent shooting. And then after that point, it was more just, photography oriented stuff. So I think what we're each going to do is kind of go through and talk about some of the stuff that we focused on, and then maybe some of the challenges we ran into while we were photographing, because we all kind of split up since there were so many subjects. Macy, do you want to go first and talk about like what you were focusing on and stuff?
Yeah. Okay, so I think I personally made a really big mistake, and that was to try to capture like a bunch
It's a
of
great
different
start.
types.
That's a great start.
Yeah. But my goal was to capture like as much as I could of different things of
Mhm.
like skimmers specifically.
Yeah.
And I think it was pretty smart to focus on one species, but I do think I should have focused on maybe like behavioral stuff like flight, or maybe I should have focused exclusively on light or something like that because we were only there for a weekend.
Mhm.
And if I had done that, I could have gotten into more of a groove. But instead, I was like overthinking, like doing as much as I possibly could.
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up getting like a couple decent flight shots, a couple decent portraits, some chicks, a little bit of like backlighting and stuff. But
Mhm.
so that's kind of what I aimed for, and I was mainly focused on skimmers because I'm pretty used to photographing like common terns from working in like other field studies and stuff.
Oh yeah,
And
you just did that time on the Puffin Island. Do you want to talk about that a
yeah,
little bit? Just briefly mention that.
yeah. I'll just really briefly summarize. So for like a month and a half, I was working in Project Puffin, where I was working with a bunch of well, two tern species, Arctic terns and common terns, and then Atlantic puffins, black guillemots, common murres, and razorbills. And it was really fun, and I got a lot of time with them. So, and there's also a lot of oyster catchers in Massachusetts. So I was like, black skimmers. I've seen them once in my life before in February. Totally screwed it up. Really wanted to just nail a bunch of shots of them, make up for that. And I think I got pretty good shots, but I do think if I were to go again, I would either spend more time there or hyper fixate on like action or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I think you would need to do both things. I think you would have to spend at least a week there to fully maximize. I mean, when you have a spot that's this ludicrous, I mean, there was just so many birds. I mean, if you look at the eBird reports for this place, it'll say like 1,200 common terns. And it's like, it's just there's so much stuff to photograph. I know Soren, when you were there, you just pretty much it basically just focused on flight shots for the most part, right?
That's right. Yeah. For me, I really took it as an opportunity because all I really have been wanting to do recently and sort of my whole purpose for my wildlife photography stuff has been based around environmental shots.
Hmm.
Uh, and so that's sort of how I see it is like if I wasn't going to come away with a good environmental shot, then I wasn't going to be happy with that trip. So that's pretty much all I did. So I went out and I'm always trying to cut my focal length. The way I see it, the wider the better. And I sort of have that mindset for my camera trapping work. I realized that if you shoot in a wider focal length, you get more of the background in focus and you get to learn more about that animal's environment. And here we have this perfect environment, this beautiful dune, this beautiful colony in the background. So I was able to do some pretty cool stuff with that. And obviously, when you're going for flight shots and you're relying on animals flying close to you in their own jurisdiction,
Hmm.
it's kind of a high risk, high reward type of situation where it's really easy to not get good shots. And I will tell you, I have hundreds of not good shots, but
Just hundreds, not thousands.
perhaps thousands. I would have to check that number for you. But I will tell you that I did get a few bangers. And I got this one shot the first morning at like 150 millimeters. Beautiful shot with the skimmer flying in and the sun in the background as sunrise. And it's just, one of those situations where everything kind of lines up perfectly. You get this beautiful, intimate shot of the skimmer. I love it because I feel like it's, really easy to sort of interact with that skimmer in an intimate way. And then the colors just look great. The sun's in the shot. You get to see the dune in the background. And then the second shot I got, this was the next afternoon that I'm really happy with, is one thing that the skimmers would do every maybe 15 minutes or so is this thing. I had to look it up. It's called synchronous flight. And that's when all of the skimmers in the colony, and there's like thousands, they would
And the
all
turns
fly
too.
up.
The turns with them too. They
The
don't go.
turns too.
Mhm.
They'd all fly up at once and just rush out and fly out over the ocean. And this is just a phenomenal thing to see. And if you're standing on the shore, it's like you're in this vortex of birds flying out over you, just rushing around you. And I was like really determined to capture a good shot of that. So I went out with a camera and I threw on a shorter focal length and I was at maybe 40 millimeters to make sure I really got a wide shot because I really wanted to capture the energy in this sequence. And I just, spammed the shutter pretty much. And this is, good lighting, everything kind of lined up perfectly. Took a ton of shots of this as the birds came out. And one of the shots just lined up perfectly where I have a bird up close with all these thousands of skimmers and terns in the background. Beautiful shot. You can see on my Instagram.
Your Instagram is Soren Goldsmith,
Soren Goldsmith.
Soren.goldsmith. Uh, quick plug there.
No
Um,
dot. No dot.
no
Just
dot. Oh, I apologize. I sincerely apologize. You
wanna
got
follow
the shot. What?
unless you want to follow my personal account, you can see Soren Goldsmith.
Yeah, go follow that too for good
Soren
measure.
Goldsmith is my photography account.
Just to make it very clear. You got the shot with the turn flying too, with all the skimmers that were on the ground as well, right?
I did get that shot. That was one of my favorites.
I like that one a lot.
It is not published yet, but I have this one shot that I was shooting. This is also at 40 millimeters of turn flying over, and then you can see in the ground behind it with just a whole bunch of skimmers just chilling out. And there's actually an oyster catcher if you look very closely.
Its
Uh,
head just sticking out of the bottom right
I
corner.
did not even know it was there until Martin pointed it out. But yeah, so that was what I was focusing on. which and that's interesting because like the types of shots that Maceo and Martin were going for, I don't have any of those shots that they have. I have like one or two portraits, but really it's interesting just to see how different photographers can come away with much different stuff from the same area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. That's really interesting to see. And another thing also about the synchronized flying that they do, I noticed that at my least turn spot that we've all been to together as well. But I have a least turn spot. If you guys, for people listening, if you see on my Instagram, I'm gonna have a lot of least turn shots I'm gonna be posting, and all of them are from this one location that I photograph at a lot. And they do the same thing. It's kind of like a 20-minute reset where they'll all just launch off the beach together, and then they'll come back, and it's kind of nice because if they're all in bad spots or something, they'll all just go out and reset themselves, and then they'll all go to like a completely different location. Also, Maceo, didn't you say it had something to do with like practicing for evading a predator or something along those lines? I know you mentioned you maybe had learned about it during your work with the puffins.
Yeah. So the Arctic and common terns on the island I was working on would occasionally all take off at the same time.
Mhm.
And the reason they would do this is so that if a predator were to arrive in the area, they could all be ready to, in a synchronized fashion, take off at the same time and chase off that predator. And it will
Mhm.
really like overwhelm anything that goes to the island. There
Yeah.
were some ospreys that passed by, did not last like a second. Ravens would fly by and they'd get chased off by like a million turns. Like
Mhm.
it's a very effective strategy. And it's again, like Soren said, an incredibly powerful thing to see in the field.
Yeah, it was crazy because at this location, as I said, the amount of birds was just insane. And at my least turn spot, it maybe be like 200 turns and they'd fly off. This place, it was thousands of birds, and we were all lying down, and they were flying like 4 feet above the ground. So it's just this wall of birds, like a blanket passing over you, just full of skimmers and terns, which was just really neat. I don't know why. Do you guys know why like the alcids or the oyster catchers or whatever happens to be in the same area of those birds, why don't they fly out the same way?
Wait, are you asking me?
Just
I
either of you
my,
guys.
my assumption is that oyster catchers are not colony birds, so they don't have that same sort of hive mind that the terns and the skimmers have.
Mhm.
Well, I have the reason.
You're just like,
And
well, actually, you're incorrect, and I
no,
don't
no,
know
you're
that.
not. You're not. You're right, and you're like halfway there. Um, but just the because an oyster catcher isn't in a colony, they
Mhm.
rely on using the like coloration of their bill and their eye to draw attention from predators away. So they
Mhm.
use themselves as like a they'll sort of like sacrifice themselves, be really loud, and run away to distract people. And because there's not a lot of them, they can't rely on like the swarming tactics.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the time, puffins are very like um they'll stick with their children throughout the season and be
Mhm.
like very very like caring, and they'll go out and like spend most of their day feeding, but the second a predator shows up they kind of just dip, and they rely on the fact
Great
that
parenting.
there's yeah, they rely on the fact that there's like minimal threats in the areas they live, or that there's a giant colony of terns that will protect them. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Interesting. Do gulls? Because I know I was photographing horned and tufted puffins up in Alaska a couple years ago, and they're like in this big colony of like black-legged kittiwakes. Do gulls do a similar thing to the terns or not really?
Yeah, I have minimal experience with it, but
Mhm.
in my experience, the terns will sort of like defecate on people and animals and stuff to keep them away,
Yeah.
and gulls will do a similar thing, and I
Mhm.
think they will also normally attack people, but in my experience, I think I got lucky, and they never attacked me if I was near chicks. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that's neat. Also, wait, when you were going back to the puffin work you did for a second, you like banded puffin chicks and stuff, right?
Yeah, I only banded one puffin chick, but I banded a lot of tern chicks.
Avian influenza denier, right? That one.
Yeah. I named my puffin chick avian influenza denier. That is on the record. Everyone who everyone who recites them from now until the day they die will see that. on
That's
their computer.
fantastic. Also, can I throw the image of the baby puffin in on the thumbnail for this episode?
Yeah, yeah, for
Sweet.
sure.
It's gonna be so random for anyone looking through it who hasn't listened to the episode yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is super neat behavior to watch though, because I've noticed it with the terns, and it's funny because the plovers don't do it, but the plovers I've noticed they get all tense when it happens, and they get like ready to fly, but then they relax, and then the terns just come back. Um, but it is really cool because if all of them, as I was saying, if they're all in terrible spots, then they fly out, and now you just have to wait and see where they land, and you can get them in a completely different area with different angles and lighting and everything. When I was down in New York with these guys, I had an issue. So these guys were both, so Soren was very, very specific in what he wanted. He was like action shots, preferably more environmental, focusing on skimmers. And that was kind of his whole thing. Maceo was slightly less focused, but more just like skimmers. That's what he wanted. The issue I had is only shorebirds and seabirds, whatever you want to call them, whatever group of animals this is, birds that live on the shore, right? Um, Only ones I really have good shots of are piping plovers and least terns. I mean, there's some, I have like a couple, the odd common tern shot here and there, but I was going to this beach with like 1,500 common terns, hundreds of skimmers, 50 oyster catchers, and I had not gotten good shots really of any of these species. So I've only seen, there's a beach near me that has a pair of oyster catchers. I've only seen them once. I got terrible images. I had never seen skimmers before. And I'd seen a bunch of common terns, but usually they were flyovers at my least turn location. So, Maceo, as you were saying, you were focused on skimmers, but weren't really focused on a style of shot. I wasn't focused on anything at all. I was just going in there and I was like, I want shots of all of this. And as you were saying, there was such a limited amount of time that it was just so difficult because what happened was on the Saturday sunset, the light was incredible. The lighting at this place is ridiculous, but there were so many birds. I ended up locking up for like 5 minutes during the best time of the best light, right when the sun was going down, which for anyone who shoots during these times knows that's a significant chunk of time. That time usually lasts like 20 minutes. So I locked up for like 5 minutes because there's so much stuff to do. I didn't know, like there was basically where I was lying. I had been photographing black skimmer chicks and I kind of wanted to get one rimlet with like the really deep red backlight, but also there was oyster catchers on the beach and I hadn't really shot them, but also they were kind of more skittish than the other birds and they're hard to approach, so I didn't know if I went after them I was going to lose my opportunities. And then there was just common terns everywhere, so I locked up, and then I ended up going for a common tern shot, and then this guy with a tripod ended up spooking the tern I was trying to get, and I didn't get a shot of it with the sunset, which was sad. And then he took a picture of me when I was lying down, which was kind of weird. He laughed and they took his phone and then just took a picture of me like right in front of me and then just kept walking. I was like, okay. But regardless of that, I did get some pretty good stuff that I was happy with. One thing is I'm shooting on a 500 millimeter prime, so I didn't have the versatility of being able to zoom out, which is something I would have liked. I would have liked to get wider compositions, so I'm looking at getting a zoom lens here pretty soon. But one shot I did get that I was really happy with was artificial bokeh from a building about like a mile down the beach or something like that. I've been focusing a lot on artificial bokeh this whole season, especially at my least turn spot. And I've gotten some stuff there, but at this place there was some really nice bokeh opportunities. And when the sun had went down, all of the terns and skimmers just landed on the beach and they were just there. And then they would do the synchronized flying, and it was really dark. It was too late to get any action shots. And I just ended up lining up this one shot with a juvenile common tern. And then another shot I've been working with my least terns is trying to get a bird out of focus in the bokeh and getting the impression of the bird in the bokeh, but it's out of focus. So it's more like a texture shadow thing than an actual in focus bird. But what I was able to do is actually get a shot of an in focus tern and then have the out of focus tern in the bokeh because there's so many terns around, which was really neat. And then I got some more just kind of basic blue hour portraits of the skimmers and stuff like that. Maceo, I know we were shooting together. Soren was working on the flight shots, but that last morning we were lined up together with that group of skimmers,
Yes, we were.
Yeah, I got some pretty decent stuff there. But then someone flushed the one we were trying to, there was a lot of that. It was like someone flushed the one I was waiting on because it was like a blue background from the sky behind it. and then the light was about to hit it and get really red and make this really cool contrast, but then someone flushed it. And I was like, no. But aside from that, it was an amazing trip. I'm kind of making it sound like there was too much stuff to have fun. Like, it was incredible. It was so cool. I got a bunch of shots I was happy with. One thing that bothered me was there was so many birds. There was just bird poop all over the beach. Like, the whole thing was just covered in it everywhere. And it was like bothering me a lot because when you slow approach a bird, you army crawl up to it. At my turn spot, I'll lie down 50 yards from a turn and then slowly crawl up to it. But I didn't really feel willing to do that when the whole beach was just covered in bird poop. And also the sand hurt. I don't know. Did you guys notice that when you were there?
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah. You're just too
You
cool.
just have a weak mindset.
Yep. Weak mindset. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of walked into that one. No, but it was like at my turn spot, the sand is a lot finer. At this place, it was still pretty fine, but it was bigger chunks. And I was wearing long sleeves, and then the sand would get into the long sleeves and rub against my elbow. So by the second morning, I could I barely wanted to crawl. I mean, if there was like a great skimmer shot, I just did it regardless, But yeah, I think how many shots did you guys end up getting that you liked, like roughly?
I got a whole bunch of shots that I liked.
Mhm.
I'd say like I probably got like 20 shots that I really like,
Oh man.
and probably like 3 shots that I would publish.
Maceo, how many shots did you end up getting that you liked?
I got okay. Honestly, I might need to go back and, but I think I have around like
Yeah, you should
20
go back.
that I like,
You
and
should
then
go
I have
back and count all of them right now individually.
no, 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 no. I already did that, man. But I have more that I might want to look into in Lightroom because I think I might have overlooked them.
Yeah, no, I
But
feel that.
around 20 are like on my phone.
Ryan, can you make me host? I want to share.
Oh, you want to share? Okay, I'm gonna have to overlay the
You don't need to overlay it. Yeah, I just for reference to you guys.
yeah, but I think I got maybe like 10 shots I ended up liking. Oh, that's cool.
Like this is one of the shots one of the shots I ended up liking that I wouldn't post.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I got you. I feel you. Yeah, I ended up getting like 10 or so that I liked. So when I remember we were all shooting I remember you started shooting the wide angle stuff because I was like, I kind of jokingly said you should shoot wide angles the whole time, the rest of the time. And then you picked up your wide angle and then you just started doing it. And I'm like, oh, I felt bad because I thought you were going to like end up just focusing on that and hyper fixating on it and then not getting any wide angles. But then you ended up coming out with these like 2 really good bangers that were just insane. Did anyone get also fun thing when we were shooting at the place? There was this random pond. Calling it a pond is generous. It was like a very, very, very big puddle, and we were all shooting at because the skimmers and the terns would come by and just drink out of this pond in the parking lot. It was like ridiculous, and then they would just sit in the parking lot too. Did anyone get any shots out of that they liked or not really?
That's my favorite.
Not,
What, Maceo?
I was gonna say not of the skimming itself, but yes.
Yeah, I got a couple turn flight shots. I'm like, oh, these are kind of neat, but I don't know. It was such an insane opportunity. I wish we could have gotten eye level in the pond. There was this gate surrounding it that wouldn't let us get eye level, and that was really depressing because the shots you could have gotten of the skimming when it was eye level were just ridiculous. But yeah, it was kind of cool just to see him in that setting though, because usually you just see him kind of sitting on the beach. Um, but yeah, I had a lot of fun. It was a blast, and then I wish we could have done a whole episode on the main trip, but no bears, unfortunately. Well, bear, we did see one, which was awesome, but
Bear.
no photos. Bear. Um, it was funny. We were actually supposed to record this episode. This episode we were supposed to record around the campfire on the main trip, but we ended up just getting too tired to do that because we were doing a lot of hiking and stuff. So we ended up just kind of falling asleep in our tent and not doing it. Oh, that's a cool shot. We go back to that one. Also, for people who are just listening, Soren is now going through on the Zoom call and just flicking through all of his images on Lightroom that he saw when we were there, that he got when we were there. But yeah, do you guys have anything else to add to it? I think that covers most of it.
Yeah, I mean it was a really great trip. I would say like we could talk about things we learned.
Hmm. Oh, okay. Well, starting off, don't buy a 2-star hotel because, yeah, that's the first one. Um, no, for me, I think it would have to be going into the situation with more defining your expectations and not necessarily expectations, but your goals. Because I went into that situation and I missed out on shots because I was just so torn up by all the options. I there was so much stuff to go after. I ended up just freezing and not going after anything. So that was one thing. I think that's the main thing I think I would want to learn from that. And then also just like when you go back to a spot like this, just knowing that maybe spending more than a weekend, might kind of just be a requirement just due to the insane nature of how many subjects you have. Maceo, was there anything like you learned particularly with this trip?
Yeah, I have two main takeaways.
Hmm.
And they're both kind of centered around that one sort of mistake I made. And
Hmm.
the first one is um to, like you said before, come into it with like maybe like a shot or like an atmosphere or something that you want to capture going into the area. Like let's say you want to get like really good backlighting or
Hmm.
just really good behavior shots or like flight or something like that. Just going in knowing that, but
Yeah.
also um to just not really overthink it and enjoy it and just kind of like maybe stick to the subjects you're working with in the moment.
Yeah.
um because um if you don't, you might end up like kind of screwing yourself over by like hopping between subjects.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the main thing for me. It was next time I go down there, I think honestly, if you have a week and just spend each day focusing on one thing and not skipping at all, unless something crazy happens. You know what I'm saying? Just like spend Monday going for skimmers. That's it. Like specifically skimmer portraits, and then spend Tuesday going for common turn portraits, and so on and so forth. One thing I realized about the skimmers, this is kind of a side fact that I more learned. It's not like some lesson I learned, it's just something neat I noticed. I'm pretty sure most people listening to this are going to be familiar with photographing shorebirds. When you do it, you know how you crawl up to them and they don't react at all, right? You guys know what I'm talking about? You can just crawl up to like turns and stuff and they just don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing I noticed with these skimmers was when we got there before sunrise, like way before sunrise, there's nobody there. I was trying to slow approach these turns, and the roped off area was like 100 yards away, maybe 50 yards away. Like it's really far away, and the skimmers were not having it. I was lying down, crawling 50 yards away from all the skimmers, and they were just coming out and dive bombing me, like cruising right at me. Did you guys have this happen to you any of the mornings? I think Maceo, you had it happen, right?
The
The skimmers freaking
skimmers?
out. Yeah.
No,
Dude,
I
okay,
don't
maybe
think
they
so.
maybe they just hated me. So, okay, I
Yeah,
don't
I don't know,
so
man.
if you guys didn't okay, this is going to be a fun thing. So, I was crawling, I'm lying down, literally like 50 yards away, and the skimmers were making their squawking like beep sound at me, flying a foot off the ground, and they peel off last second. And they all just like came the second morning, especially, they all came and like harassed me. And I had to just get up and leave because I didn't want to keep causing them to flush and freak out. But also, I was getting like scared. I'm like, this is like whack because I felt like they're gonna like hit me with their big bill or something. I don't think they actually do that, but they're very intimidating. They're rather large birds when they're flying up to you like that. I don't know what the deal was though, because Soren walked right up to the nesting area. They didn't care about him. And also
I feel like that.
during the day, I could crawl around all over the beach. Like when the sun was out, I could crawl all over the beach. I could walk right up to the nesting area. The skimmers would land right in front of you. They didn't care. They were like sleeping. But for some reason, just something, maybe it was just me. Maybe they just hated me and they just didn't like me being there. It's just me specifically. They were paid off to like harass me or something. I don't know. But that is something I noticed. They were just not having any of it. Maybe they thought I was like a dog or something because I had my backpack on and I was crawling and it was dark and they couldn't see that well.
I
Maybe.
think I think I know, and I'm just realizing this now.
Hmm.
Okay, so when I was working with the puffins and terns, the closer the terns were to being like just hatched, the
Yeah.
more intense and it was like an extreme difference. The more intense they would dive bomb.
Mhm.
So like right when the chicks were like little and getting a little larger, the terns would just constantly be dive bombing you, and we'd have to be in the colony, so we'd have to be doing work with the chicks,
Yeah,
just to assess like the populations. Just disclosing, we're not stressing these animals for no reason,
just
but
walking through the
they
nesting
were,
area for fun. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, we were just
Yeah.
doing it for fun. But I would get like nailed like 5 times in a row at peak nesting season. But before that, they wouldn't even touch me. And the skimmer chicks at that beach looked pretty young, and all the terns seemed to have at least been able to like leave their nesting area,
See, now
as far as I know.
I
that
didn't
would
see any skimmers dive bombing that other skimmers had murdered the.
the chick right in front of you. Yeah, I remember I look in the ground and I'm like, oh, there's a dead chick here. And I go to Mason, I'm like, oh, there's a dead chick. And Soren overhears me. He goes, oh, I watched it get murdered. We both look at it. We're like, what? Wait, so what happened exactly with that?
I didn't even realize that that chick had been killed, but I
Mhm.
watched as a skimmer chick was just walking around minding its own business. This other skimmer swoops in and starts just ramming it with its beak like a
So
woodpecker.
bad. Like a
Um,
woodpecker. Oh my God.
yeah, I was like woodpeckering this chick, and the chick was just sort of like knocked over and laid in the ground. I was like, oh, he'll get up in a second. And then
Spoiler alert, he did not get up in a
few
second.
minutes pass. Maybe it might have been like an hour. Um, and, and no, that chick was not getting up in a second.
Not getting up in a second. Yeah. Well, I remember because I saw the fuzz sticking up. I didn't know if it was a turn chick or a skimmer chick. And I was like, oh, it's dead. And yeah, you didn't get any shots of it, right? Of it actually
Just
happening?
thoughts of the murder, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah. We did see another skimmer chick get attacked. That is something we did see. I don't know if all of us saw it. I got some shots of it, but it got attacked by an adult. I thought it was going to get killed too, but it ended up surviving. One thing, Maceo, on your theory about them being more wary of people, that would have made sense. But the issue was they let everybody just walk up to the nesting area most of the time without any complaint. You know what I'm saying? Like the first morning, Soren was able to walk right up to it. They didn't care at all. But then I'm crawling out like a football field away, and they just fly across the whole thing and harass me. I don't know
Yeah,
what the
Okay,
deal was.
I noticed
I
this.
have. Oh, you
It was
go.
like if you were further away, they cared more than if you were up close.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't know. My guess is because they didn't care when it was the daytime. Even when I was crawling far away, they didn't mind me. It was something about being early in the morning that they just were not having it. They're like, absolutely not. I don't know. I don't know what the deal was. Maceo, what were you saying?
Oh, I was gonna say there might be like there's a couple other things. I did see standing people get dive bombed a little bit, but
I
I
saw it a
if you
little
were
bit. Yeah.
getting, yeah, if you got dive bombed a lot, it's probably different. But maybe
Mhm.
because they're in the air, they see more of your profile on the ground when you're
Yeah.
laying down because you're like elongated, whereas if you're standing, you're just like they'll see like your shoulders and head from above.
Hmm.
I don't know. That's just like
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, I get what you're saying. I think my best guess would be that when it was dark, I'm thinking maybe they couldn't see as well. And I did have a backpack on, which made me look taller, but in a different way, like a dog sized animal or like a raccoon or something. And maybe they just thought I was something else aside from a person. You know what I'm saying? Because I did see the standing up people get dive bomb here and there, but I'm talking like twice a minute. One would come by, scream at me, bank last minute. And I had to just get up and leave because I didn't want to keep. And then when I stood up, they stopped. So I don't know. I don't know what the deal was, but that is something kind of funky I'm going to have to keep in mind next time I try to photograph skimmers. I don't know if it's a universal thing. Maybe anyone who's photographed skimmers can let me know later down the line. But yeah. So I think that's all I've got. Earth to people.
Yeah, Sam.
Same. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I, I would like to say my piece of advice that I learned on this trip.
Go for it.
I learned two things, all right? The first one is I think it's a good idea if you're doing a photography trip to take risks. Because I think that you know, it's possible that you'll take a risk and you won't get anything good. But it's also possible you'll take a risk and you'll get some of the best shots you've ever taken. So I would say if you have an idea, go for it. And the second piece of advice I have is don't be one of those people that goes to a beach of shorebirds and takes photos not at eye level.
On a tripod standing up with like a $12,000 setup.
And I think if you're one of those people that you have already done a great job getting yourself to the point where you're learning about these birds, you're getting good equipment, but the way you can take your photography to the next level, get down at eye level, because if you're shooting up at 5 feet in the air down on a tern or a skimmer or an oyster catcher, the background is just all going to be sand. You're not going to get anything interesting. You're not going to get any nice light. Get down at eye level, capture the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
You should run workshops like that and just explain it exactly that way.
Soren pro tip.
Yeah, that was some fantastic advice from Soren Goldsmith. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. It was a fun trip. It was a blast. And also, I hope you guys listening like this kind of episode. This one was like a little off the rails. I'll probably be more organized in the future, but I'm thinking about, I did mention, I think in the first episode that I wanted to do storytelling episodes behind images that I got. So usually it probably won't be a group episode like this, but I am thinking about doing more storytelling episodes when there is kind of a fun story behind an image. But yeah, so thank you guys for coming on. That was a blast. I'm glad we got to record it, even though it wasn't in person in Maine. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you on the next episode.